Today, my special guest on Hello Darling is Adam Przytula. Adam is the founder of social change enterprise Armed for Life, a school program that helps students deal with mental health issues and become the best version of themselves. Adam struggles through primary school with severe bullying, which he needed help with, and no one was there to give it. He doesn't want what happened to him in his youth to replicate in others. Adam has also recently published the book, The Road to Resilience, a guide to arming yourself to deal with unique challenges in learning to bounce back. Hello, darling. Welcome to my show.
Hello, darling.
How are you today?
I'm good.
Adam, there is so much to talk about.
There
but
is.
I will start with Armed for Life. What inspired you to establish Armed for Life? When did the name come from?
Two separate questions, really. What inspired it, I suppose, was my experience of school, as it often is. We'll get to the details later, but I struggled the entire 5 years of high school, and basically the entire 5 years I was never asked if I was okay. Part of why I'm an ambassador for Are You Okay? And I almost failed year 12, and then I got out and I joined a team going into schools. I had a turning point partway through that year, and it was that moment where I realized I needed help the entire 5 years of high school. No one was there to give it, and that's where the seed was planted. You need to be that guy.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And Armed for Life, what kind of programs do you run?
Sure. Our purpose is centered in building resilience, improving mental health, well-being, self-esteem, relationships. That's done through a number of different avenues now. We've been running for almost 12 years. So there's about 30 different presentations that we do. There's about 10 different programs as well. So we have about 18 different team members to fill some of those roles in the programs, like, barbers for our barbershop program. And we have some NBL1 players and AFL player for our armed athletes program. So there's a large range of what we do. Because I realized as time went on, I can impact a lot of people, but I'm probably not going to reach everyone. So we need to bring other people in that are going to help to reach the kind of students that we're not going to reach.
And what would be your impact reach to date? How many students have watched your programs or benefited from it?
So over the course of the 12 years, I think we started as just schools. So I guess I'll answer it with schools. We've been in over 500 schools across WA, spoken in Cape Town, South Africa. Next year looks like Cape Town again, Hawaii, and Hong Kong.
Wow.
And then the following year looks like Vegas. So I'm not trying to make it happen. These things just and it's all happening before I go over East, by the way, which is interesting. But overall, we've impacted over 1 million people, most of them being students, just because we're usually speaking to year groups, and we've been doing it for 12 years, and we hit a lot of students over the course of every term. So
incredible. Over 1 million students. Yeah. The ratio, the age, the average age?
Well, we started high school, but now we're doing a lot of primary school as well. So basic, and we've just brought someone on. I do year 3 to year 12 and staff and parents. And now that's started to we're doing some football clubs, we're doing some NBL1 clubs, we're doing a lot of businesses as well. So that's starting to expand organically. And we've just brought someone on to do like pre-primary to year 2, because that's not my jam. But yeah, so we cover everyone, really.
And the ratio of female to male or male to female? As
in team members or people to speak to?
People to speak to.
It's pretty even. I would probably, because I am a male presenter, we have presentations like the Real Men session. And so I tend to do more of those. And because I tend to do about 90% of the speaking, it means that there's probably, 55% male versus 45% female. So that there is quite a lot of diversity in what we present on and who we present to.
Do you see difference? Can you verbalize the difference? Who is more perceptive as a student, as a female to males? You don't have to please me. You can tell the truth.
No. Well, the truth is that the girls are way easier to speak to.
You just pleased me.
Yeah. But it is when I'm presenting, girls, it's like they laugh at everything. They're easy to speak to. I have to work so much harder to win guys over, and I literally have to sometimes use everything in my skill set to be able to pull guys in when I'm just presenting to guys as an example. But, on the flip side to that, the Real Men session as an example, I'm usually speaking to year 9 or 10 boys, and that's the session I have 15 or 20 guys lining up to shake my hand afterwards. So even though I have to work harder, the payoff is worth it in the end.
And that was my next question. How do you win their trust? How do you build the confidence? Because teenagers are notorious for not opening up.
Yeah.
Boys don't talk, men don't cry.
Yeah.
How do you do it?
I think I've naturally developed the skill over time. Overall, I've actually been speaking for 23 years. So it's something that and there are certain things that you can do. Everything I do is purposeful. So I'll play a game at the start if there's time, depending on the age. All the way up until year 9, I'll naturally play a game to start with. I bring chocolate with me. I use everything that I can in my skill set. But ultimately, I think it's the vulnerability. When I'm sharing from my experiences, even though there's practical points in every presentation that we run, there's even some statistics in there, that doesn't win them over. What wins them over is sharing your own perspective, the things that you've experienced, your lived experience as such. That what actually works to win people over. So when I'm running the Real Men session, again, as an example, I'm talking about, points like owning your issues and dealing with them, self-control, pornography, and I'm sharing how I had no self-control and I was punching holes in doors and I was addicted to porn as a teenager. That's why I think because of that, they actually tune in, because by halfway through, they're actually starting to lean in and starting to listen to what you have to say.
That's what I was very, very impressed about, the topics, the taboo topics that mostly are kept under the blanket. For example, pornography, sex addiction. How do you talk to young people about it without them shutting off?
I don't think the risk is them shutting off. I don't think they ever shut off because they want to know.
Yes.
I think if we take, we present on topics like sexual harassment and sexual assault and sexual consent, stuff like that. They want to know the information because they get it wrong. And there are lifelong consequences. When it comes to pornography, as an example, that is one of the key reasons why we have so many issues with sexual harassment or sexual consent. So many, it's almost like there's a lot that we present on, but if you look at resilience, mental health, self-esteem, relationships, they're all really connected and they influence each other. When you have a low self-esteem, you struggle to manage your emotions. You don't have resilience. You don't deal with problems in a healthy way. It's kind of the same in this space where when you are looking at porn and you're addicted to porn, objectification takes place. So you're more likely to abuse, harass, or assault a person because their value is reduced down to that of an object.
How young can we start educating young people about what's right, what's wrong? Because I saw a social media post, a porn is a norm. I mean, what a shocking phrase. What a shocking reality. How young people are exposed to access to a porn footage and material? How young are they when they
the average age of exposure is 8 years old.
Okay.
That's gotten younger and younger over the course of time, over the last, I'd say, 5 to 10 years.
Okay.
That is a problem.
And then they might think this is the norm.
Well, once the problem is that I think parents don't really have the discussions early enough. I don't need to have that discussion, or it's awkward to have the discussion. My 11-year-old, I have an 11-year-old and a 2-year-old. And when my wife was pregnant with that 2-year-old, he's like, I'm going to pray he comes tomorrow. I'm like, buddy, that's not how sex works. And so we had a conversation about it when he was 7. It was clear. I used penis and vagina, used proper terms, so it wasn't weird. And then a year later, when he was 8, knowing the number, I said, well, bud, at some point, you're going to see something on a screen. It's not your fault. Come and talk to me about it because I have that relationship with him. That's really important. We kind of go, I don't want to talk about it because it makes me feel weird and uncomfortable. So then they find out about it on their own. And so then they feel uncomfortable and feel guilt and shame. But then they eventually go back to it, especially if they have a low self-esteem and they're struggling with how they feel about themselves.
But you are an exceptional parent, father, because you are a teacher. You walk your own talk of a journey that was extraordinary. A lot of parents don't feel comfortable, don't feel confident, don't find the time, escape the topic. How about schools? When could schools put it into curriculum? Because you even talk about masturbation. Why do you touch on this subject, on this touchy subject, without being now? Why is it important?
Well, because of all of the consequences that come from it.
So explain it to our viewers.
realistically, I think we should be talking about it at the start of high school. Year 7, year 8, we should start to have this conversation. Prior to that, you can start talking about respect, because that's really connected too.
Mhm.
Because ultimately, I remember when, I think it was a couple of years ago, there was a big social media, maybe even last year, a woman in Melbourne who, this big social media campaign, we need to talk more about sexual consent in schools
Mhm.
because of what's happening at parties and happening with
Mhm.
teenagers. And Dr. Bruce Robinson, who started the Fathering Project, I remember him
Mhm.
being on the news saying, if we just talk about respect at an earlier age, none of this becomes a problem. And it's so true.
Prevention.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's my point. Why only high school?
Yep.
If I believe that 7-year-old get access to porn
Yep.
videos or porn footage or whatever the term is.
Mm.
So much earlier.
I'm aware, even with year 7s,
Yeah.
schools don't want me to talk about porn. And I understand that, we're afraid of contagion. We're afraid of, what if that one kid who hasn't seen it then is told about it and then they go look it up. That's why I think we should be starting year 7, year 8. Yeah, okay, earlier I understand the concern and I understand the hesitation, but we can be talking about other things that can almost prepare and then equipping parents to have that discussion with younger children, like 8, 9, 10, 11. Parents should be having that discussion, not necessarily at school. So then have presentations with parents coming to the school, actually giving advice about, this is how you talk about it, this is why you need to talk about it.
You wrote a book, recently published book,
Mm.
The Road to Resilience.
Yeah.
I read the book. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I almost think that the book is as much for young people as for the parents.
Wasn't the plan, but that's how it's become.
Please take us, our viewers, now to your life journey, to your childhood,
Yep.
your experience that made you a man you are today.
Sure. I mean, it's kind of grounded in everything that I do, let alone writing the book and wanting to get the help and the information out there. I really like the struggle with school probably happened from year 4 onwards. I was champion boy until year 4, so I was the fastest kid in the year group. Everyone likes the fast kid in primary school, so I was naturally popular.
Yeah.
But it meant that I didn't find a group of friends. I kind of floated. And because I didn't really establish myself with a group of friends, I hit a point in year 4 where I ended up with eczema so bad that I was given, doctors couldn't figure it out for about 9 months, and then finally figured it out, and they gave me cortisone tablets or injections. Mum and dad tell me different stories. So being on steroids in year 4 didn't end well.
Wow.
I doubled in size.
Yeah.
So I went from being the fast kid to being the chunky kid, and it almost happened overnight. And I remember the very first time I got bullied, I was like, oh, I've never experienced it before. I didn't really understand what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
Year 5 and 6, I switched my focus. So I was in the PAC program. So I kind of find my identity in that because I lost my running. And then year 7, I chose the wrong friendship group and they all turned on me. And that's when the bullying started. First time it happened was in year 7 with 4 mates. But it meant that I went into high school, because back in the day, high school started in year 8. With no confidence, no self-esteem. The bullying started day 1 because I didn't find friends to the middle of year 9. So I was an open target for bullying.
Wow.
And then having a suicide plan in place in year 10.
So the lowest point was your suicide plan.
It was like this continuing valley, and then I hit this point, and then I just didn't get better until I had this turning point when I was 18. So, and I tried everything that I could to try and make myself feel better, and nothing worked.
So the journey of depression over 7 years, can you give me a feel of it? What was it doing to you? What you weren't able to do through this?
I just shut down emotionally, mentally. I couldn't access emotions. I was a really angry kid, so hence why I was punching holes in doors, and I would just shove all of my emotions down at school. I'd get bullied every single day. By the end of year 12, there were 58 guys that were bullying me on a daily basis.
How do you know exactly 58 guys?
Because I went back to my school and I stood in front of the graduating photo and I counted all the guys that had bullied me all the way up until the end of year 12.
Wow.
Because I don't have any photos. It was
Yes.
so traumatic for me. I have no photos, nothing saved from that time.
Oh.
So it really caused me to shut down and just get angry, and just, my self-esteem got so low that I actually didn't have a desire to live anymore. That's how extreme it got.
All right. The day you thought, the time that you thought you're going to take your life, how does a boy in a year 10 arrive in this point, and what was the plan, and what turned you around?
Yeah. The plan, and I don't go into the detailed plan because you're not meant to, but I remember the night, because I was going to a youth group at the time. It's kind of the only place I felt like I kind of connected, and I felt like I was accepted. And the girl that I had a crush on found out that I liked her and turned the whole youth group against me. She didn't know how to manage it or didn't know what to do about it. And so that was the night I'm like, oh, well,
So there was the last drop on the,
kind of was.
yeah.
The only reason why I didn't is probably because of my relationship with my grandma.
And you dedicated your book
Yes.
with most beautiful dedication that makes me teary when I read it. Tell me about your grandma and how you turned it. She turned it around for you, or you turned it around because of her.
When I was 3 onwards, I was sent to her place the entire weekend. And when I could choose, I kept going because it's the only place I felt safe. Like really, and nothing really horrible was happening at home. I felt love. I felt connection. I felt safe. As a really little kid, she was probably my best friend. She would take me to the skate park, tried to skate on a skateboard one time, fell off, broke her elbow. It wasn't funny at the time. It was funny afterwards. She would take me to the movies till it wasn't cool anymore to go to the movies with your grandma around 8 or 9 years old. I remember getting 2nd degree sunburn when I was probably 9 or 10. And so I spent an entire week. I got a week off school, but I spent an entire week because she used to be a nurse. She was a nurse in Germany during World War II. So that caring nature was just kind of so deep in her. And she's the most unconditionally loving person I've ever met.
And yet, being so loved, being so unconditionally loved by your grandma, you wouldn't share with her your struggle?
I mean, I didn't feel like I could for some reason. That whole like you man up and you shut up and you don't share and you don't talk.
Yes.
She was so incredibly loving and caring. She was the epitome of that naive little German grandma that didn't really understand things. So even in my 20s, I would sit down with her and say, "Oh, Oma," the German figure,
Yes.
"Oh, Oma, I did this and I did this." "Oh, no, you didn't." Like she literally thought I was perfect, which is wonderful and beautiful in one sense.
Yes.
But I couldn't really have those deep conversations with her.
Yes.
I could share and talk, but she didn't really, it was just love. There wasn't really wisdom or consulting that came with the relationship, but it was enough to get me through. And that's what I talk about in the book.
Yes.
One healthy relationship is enough to be able to get you through.
Yes. And you also talk in your book about so many incredible aspects. Relationships, codependency of relationship. Build on it.
I've had some pretty unhealthy relationships over the time, and I brought a lot to that table. And I think going through my divorce about 8 years ago, went and saw a psych and realized that I had been codependent my entire life. And I had no idea. There was this incredible sense of self-awareness that came through that journey. When my mum left, it created a fear of being abandoned inside of me. And so every relationship I got into, it was about 6 over the course of 18 years, but every relationship I got into, I would subtly try and control the person. Not in a, you will not do this, but I was petrified of them leaving me. So I would even go over the top and do things that seemed romantic, but I'd do things for the person, hoping that they wouldn't leave. But it eventually created a disconnection anyway. And that's, it's funny that, a codependent person is so anxiety ridden and probably some separation anxiety there, which I probably had. But you end up almost creating the thing that you're afraid of, which you often do with anxiety. So there was this whole big journey, and then the realization helped me to kind of get onto this whole separate and go 2 years, not even have coffee with women, and then I met my wife now. So, and I have a healthy relationship for the first time in my life because I spent time unpacking and working on myself because I didn't want to be codependent anymore.
Adam, anxiety, which is obviously a global problem.
Number one mental health issue today.
Yes. How did you conquer? What are your tools to conquer it? And what will be your advice for those watching us today?
There's a number of things that you can do. I mean, we have presentations designed around it, and so much of what we do is me saying, hey, it dawned on me, I don't know when, a couple of months ago, I've spent 12 years with Arm for Life going into school saying, don't do what I did. Like, this is a mistake. Don't go down this path. Don't make this decision. Don't do this because this is where it goes. And with anxiety, it's if you're experiencing this is what you can do. And the go-to keys are, there's practical things you could put in place, like worry time or anxiety time, where you remember someone giving it to me when I was at the peak of anxiety, where you sit. It's the last thing you want to do when you're in it, but you sit and you have to literally only think for like 30 seconds or a minute or 2 minutes of everything that actually makes you feel all that anxiety. It's a bit of counseling tool. It's horrible. It's helpful because you're
Mhm.
telling your brain, I am going to spend time thinking about this, because anxiety is essentially your brain trying to tell you you're going to die. In a sense,
Yeah.
if I'm not with this person, if I lose a relationship, I'm not with this person, your brain's like, if you're not with them, you're going to die. So
Wow.
you have to calm your brain down and try and help your brain to understand. It's only a part of it. It's complicated.
Yes.
So, but a part of what we talk about, the practical side that we talk about, is around things like food, exercise, sleep, like the practical things that you can do. Because anything that we struggle with, even with something like that, it tends to be genes or circumstances or lifestyle. They tend to be the contributing factors. You can't control your genes.
Yeah.
Lifestyle, circumstances you can't really control either, because they tend to happen to us.
Yeah.
Your lifestyle you can control. And when you tend to eat certain foods, we tend to be more anxious, as an example.
Mhm.
So, removing or reducing certain foods and then adding in the foods that are actually healing for the body. There are anti-inflammatory foods. There are good mood foods that produce more serotonin, as an example.
Good mood food.
Yeah.
But how do we find out about good mood food unless we looking into it? So you know where I'm going to.
Yeah.
There's
not
so
enough
much
education out there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, depression.
Yep.
There is so much conversation about depression.
Mm.
Sometimes I think there is too much conversation
Sure.
because the focus can be misused now.
Yep.
Anytime somebody feels a little bit sad, and I'm not talking about severe depressions, I'm not talking about clinical depressions, I'm depressed. Maybe you are just low.
Yep.
Maybe you are not depressed. Where do we draw the blur lines?
I say it every time I talk about anxiety or depression anyway. Depression is an overused term. It honestly is.
Okay.
And potentially over-medicated. There's absolutely a place for
Yeah.
antidepressants, but it shouldn't be the first. I've even got a friend of mine who's on my basketball team who's a doctor, and he said even doctors are trained that it shouldn't be the first go-to. And this is from a doctor saying it, not me. Okay, I'm not a trained professional. I'm not a doctor. This is a GP saying it actually is meant to be the last resort.
Yeah.
We're meant to do all these other things first, food and exercise, etc. But the difference between just having a low mood, you might be struggling, you might be feeling a little bit down or sad. Anxiety and depression are both debilitating. It's hard to do anything. It's hard to function. It's hard to actually, when you can't operate normally, I think that's when it crosses the line, and I'm legitimately struggling.
That's right.
with something like depression.
That's right. But anxiety, certain portion of anxiety we all have without being controlled by it.
Yeah. So, well, the managing emotions and self-awareness presentation that we have, we talk about how all of our emotions are valid. Anger is valid.
Yes.
Anxiety is valid. Sadness is valid.
Yes.
We just have to be, someone said to me 20 years ago, it's okay to be angry, but you have to be angry at the right person at the right time in the right way.
Yes.
So we have to take that in consideration. What we talk about with this presentation is that it's okay to feel those emotions, but you don't want to get stuck in them.
Yes.
So then if I am feeling it, how do I work towards getting out of that eventually? What am I doing practically to get out of it? When I'm delivering the "Are you okay?" messages, my spin on it is that it's okay to be down. Yes, it's okay not to be okay, but you don't want to stay that way. You want to work towards getting to a point where I'm feeling like, even if it's really extreme, it can be 4 or 5 years' time.
Yes.
When we hit those really difficult points, which is what we talk about with resilience.
Yes.
How long does it take us to get back to who we are when we go through those difficult times? It's okay to struggle for a period. When my grandma passed away 3 or 4 years ago.
Only 3-4 years ago.
So she hit 93. She made it.
Beautiful.
Pretty long time.
Yes.
And I felt like I lost my anchor. And I really felt like I was struggling for a while. I was sad. But I didn't go, and I didn't try and push it away. I went, okay, I'm sad. Why am I sad? And I worked through processing it so I didn't get stuck in it. And that's what we tend to do. We try and get rid of these emotions as soon as we can, rather than working through them and recognizing it's there for a reason. And it's okay that it's there because we don't like them. That's why I don't think it works having happiness as a goal. Happiness doesn't work as a goal, because as soon as you feel the negative emotion, like, ugh, you try and get rid of it straight away. You're meant to, happiness is wonderful. You're meant to experience it on the way to something that you're journeying towards.
That's right.
But it doesn't work as a goal.
That's right. And there's no one size fits all.
Absolutely.
What qualifies for me being happy, what qualified for you,
Yeah.
is the question of balance.
Yeah.
And not too high expectations.
Absolutely.
And nothing is permanent. Therefore, happiness cannot be permanent feeling.
Yeah.
Because without lows, you cannot have the highs.
Well, exactly. You hear that all the time. You don't appreciate the highs if you don't experience the lows. You just want to be able to manage the lows when you're in them.
Adam, thank you for creating so many highs and helping people to come out from so many lows. As you know, I give my guests at the end of my show
Yep.
a magic wand.
Yep.
And you have two wishes.
Okay.
One for the world
Mhm.
and one for yourself.
As I mentioned before the interview, this is the hardest question you've asked today. Because there's so many things that I would choose. Or I know I need to. Look, for me, it would probably be, yeah, I don't know. I don't know which point to target. Look, let's go down the route that I've chosen to write about with resilience. That everyone. Okay, let's do this. Number one, world. Everyone knows that they are worth something and that they have value, because that's ultimately at the core of almost every problem that we face. If we have a low self-esteem, we make poor choices, we allow people to mistreat us, we don't have resilience. If we struggle with our self-esteem, we don't feel like we have any value or not worth anything. So that would be my wish, that everyone in the world believes that they are worth something, that they have value, because I think it ultimately would change so much. For me, if I had a magic wand and a wish, maybe unlimited funding, because then we could just keep doing everything that we're doing and continue to roll out what we're doing to impact. We already received our first grant this year for $200,000, and it's changed everything.
Well, very down to earth wish. Thank you, Adam. Thank you for being on my show. Thank you for making such a huge difference in people's lives, and unlimited sky is the limit and beyond.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bob.